Hello, True Health Seeker, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Learn True Health podcast. Today we have with us an amazing doctor. In fact, if you've watched any of the big health documentaries out there, you know Dr. Neal Barnard. He was in What the Health, Forks Over Knives, Eating You Alive, Chow Down, A Delicate Balance, Lunch Hour, Time to Choose, Milk, and a bunch of other documentaries, including the first real big health documentary, Super Size Me, back in 2004. Do you remember that, where the guy ate McDonald's for an entire month just to see what would happen, and they documented his health results? Great movie. If you haven't seen any of those, go to Netflix. Many of these health documentaries are on Netflix. Neal Barnard has a fantastic way of conveying information without really doing a lot of fear-mongering. He focuses on the studies and the science and looks at what can we do to eliminate disease, prevent disease, and build a body that is healthy and strong. So his background is as a medical doctor, but he has spent most of his career as a medical doctor focusing on the science behind nutrition and diet. I love his very relaxed and caring attitude towards conveying this information. He looks to create a balance in our diet to maximize our health, but also maximize the health of the planet. And there is a direct correlation. So I know you're going to love today's interview. I want to let you know that today's interview is brought to you by TakeYourSupplements.com. I really believe in this company. If you're looking for your B vitamins, or you're looking to get a great CalMag, or if you'd like to nutrify your body with the 12 amino acids, the 60 essential minerals the body needs, healthy fatty acids, and the 16 vitamins the body needs, just adding to your diet, making sure it's well-rounded, making sure you're getting everything you need. Do you know if you're getting enough zinc? Do you know if you're getting enough calcium? Do you know if you're getting enough selenium? There's a lot of trace minerals the body needs, like chromium, and it's hard to get it from our diet if you're not eating 8 cups of vegetables a day. So, if you're not really making sure you're getting a variety of fruits and vegetables every day, like I'm talking 8 cups minimum, then you might have some deficiencies, especially if you have any aches or pains, if you have any symptoms. Something like restless legs is actually directly related to a mineral deficiency, and it's very easy to correct. You go to TakeYourSupplements.com, you put in your information, and one of their trained supplement health coaches will contact you within 24 hours. They set up a time for you to talk, and talking to them is free. I personally know each and every one of them. I've known them for years. In fact, I've been buying all my supplements, the same supplements that they will help hook you up with. Those are the exact same supplements for the last 7 years that my husband and I have been taking, and that our 3-year-old son takes as well. Most of them you actually drink, so they're really easy to digest and absorb. They taste really good. It is beyond any supplement I've ever had. I've bought all kinds of supplements from different companies. I've done the go to Whole Foods or the Trader Joe's and take their supplements, and I never saw a difference. I never saw a difference in taking any supplements until I started about 7 years ago taking the supplements from TakeYourSupplements.com. So check them out. It's like I said, it's free to talk to them. They discuss with you your symptoms and your nutritional needs and what kind of health goals you have. And then they work with you. They give you information about how to adjust your diet, your lifestyle, and your supplements to best support you. They're fantastic people. They also have a program that gets you free shipping. They have a great referral program. So if you tell your friends and family about it, it can actually subsidize your supplements a little bit. So really a wonderful company, wonderful people, highly recommend them. If you want any supplements at all, or if you want to shift your nutrition, shift your diet, shift your life, if you just want better energy, better sleep, definitely check out TakeYourSupplements.com. I can't say enough good things about them. I really, really enjoy them. I enjoy working with them. And I feel, as the host of Learn True Health, that I have an obligation, I have a responsibility to take care of you. You're my tribe. And I would only ever recommend something I really, really believe in. Just like I only tell my friends and family things that I know would benefit them. I feel like you guys are my family. So I'm going to take care of you and tell you only things that I really believe in, like takeyoursupplements.com. Thank you so much. Enjoy today's interview. I know you're going to like it. Dr. Neal Barnard is a wonderful guest, and he has some great information about what we can do to our diet to improve our health. Enjoy. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 254. I am beside myself. I'm so excited to have today's guest on, Dr. Neal Barnard. I feel like a little fangirl here. He is in so many health documentaries that he has his own Internet Movie Database page dedicated to him. And I guess I first was introduced to you all the way back in 2004 when I watched Super Size Me. I loved you in What the Health. My husband and I went to the movie theater and saw it in the theaters, and my husband leans over and whispers in my ear, "You should really have him on the show." And I said, "I know, I love him. He's great. I love your work." Really inspired by exactly what you've been doing to bring the science and the truth to this crazy world of diet confusion. There's so much dogma, especially with the high protein, low carb, high fat, low fat. It's pretty ridiculous. And today you're here to absolutely set the record straight. So welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to be with you today.
Absolutely. Now, you've got this book called The Cheese Trap. We definitely want to talk about that. All the links to everything that you do is going to be in the show notes of today's podcast at learntruehealth.com, in the show notes of this episode. So we'll make sure that the link to your book is there as well. I'd love to start by you sharing a little bit about you and your story. What led you to want to be a medical doctor that focuses on the science of nutrition and how we can heal or harm our bodies with food?
Well, I got to tell you, it's sort of two different things, because what led me to medicine was different from what led me to food. When I was in college, I decided to go to medical school, but I really didn't appreciate how important food is. And the year before I went to medical school, I had a job helping out I helped out at autopsies in a hospital. I was working in Minneapolis, and in the basement of the hospital, there was the morgue, which I got to tell you was a place nobody ever went into unless, you only go in because you're dead or you're somebody dealing with someone who's dead. So the telephone hadn't been repaired since the 1940s, I think. Anyway, but I have to say, from the standpoint of learning about how food affects us, it was an amazing place. We would have people die in the hospital. The pathologist would then show me what the heart actually looks like of a person who had a heart attack, or what the brain looks like for a person who had a stroke. And one day, we had a person who died of a massive heart attack in the hospital. And he took a section of ribs off the chest and set them on the table. And then he proceeded to show me how the arteries called the coronary arteries that go into the heart muscle, that they were narrowed by atherosclerotic plaque, which you can think of as like rust in a pipe. But he said, it's not just here, it's in the arteries to the brain and the arteries to the legs and all over the body. And it was really quite an eye-opener. And at the end of the exam, the pathologist left the room, and I was there to clean up. And so I put the ribs back in the chest, and I sewed up the skin and cleaned up. And then I went up to the cafeteria, and they were serving ribs for lunch. And I have to tell you, it looked like a dead body, and it smelled like a dead body. And I suddenly realized, this is a dead body. It's not a human being, but nonetheless, it's a carcass anyway. And I didn't become a vegetarian on the spot, but I was not going to eat that. And as time went on, I started to connect more and more the foods that we eat and health issues. And then I also started to understand the bigger issues, how animals are abused and how the environment is affected by our food choices. Now, you'd think I might know something about that because I grew up in Fargo, North Dakota, come from a long line of cattle ranchers, but I have to say I think, selectively inattentive to what the animals go through. So anyway, I've been making up for lost time and changed my own diet and have been endeavoring to help other people change theirs.
The when you look at what's clogging the arteries, it looks a lot like fat. It looks a lot like, chicken fat. If you squeeze the artery, you can like, I mean, you can do this. I've not obviously done it to a human, although I did take apart humans in college. but I've back when I used to cook ribs, for example, or some kind of really fatty meat, you could pretty much squeeze an artery and squeeze fat out of an artery, or would look like fat. Have they tested the fat that they find that's clogging the arteries of the heart and seen that there's a direct link between the dietary fat that they consume and then what's clogging the heart? Is it the same thing? Like if you eat a bunch of animal fat, is that exactly what's clogging the heart?
Uh, Effectively, yes, but the mechanism is a little bit different. What happens is that if you eat animal products, that there are different kinds of fats. All fats are mixtures, and you know how if not that you would do this, but if you were to cook up a whole bunch of bacon, when I was a kid, my mother would cook bacon for her kids, and when the bacon was all pulled out of the pan and on a paper towel cooling down, she would take that bacon grease and pour it into a jar, and as it cooled down, it would solidify. And the fact that it's solid at room temperature, that means it's really high in what's called saturated fat. And then there are liquid oils like corn oil or safflower oil that are high in unsaturated fats. And the saturated ones, as in bacon grease, are the ones that cause your body to make more cholesterol particles. And that's what then does the damage to the arteries. So the fat works in a bad way, but it's more indirect. It stimulates your body to make more cholesterol. The cholesterol then starts clogging up the arteries. And I have to say, by the way, meat is not the number one source. The number one source is dairy. So
Ah,
cheese, butter, yogurt, ice cream, that's the biggest source of this, and meat is number two.
interesting. Because so many, I know a lot of vegetarians who still do dairy, right? They're like, I'm a vegetarian. I'm a lacto vegetarian. And especially in India, that's a really big thing too. They'll be a vegetarian, but they'll still consume dairy. Now, there's an addictive quality to dairy, and I know this because I've been dairy free most of my life. But there was a few years ago, where we got into my husband and I got into cheese, and we would buy bricks from Costco. Like pounds, giant brick, and that brick would be gone so fast. I could not believe, it's just that was the only thing we wanted to eat. Or you go to Trader Joe's and they have the quattro formaggio, and you just want to like melt that on everything. So I felt like a little bit of a drug addict. There was a few years ago, I pretty much had to mentally enter some kind of cheese rehab to get away from it. But it's quite addictive. What is it about dairy that makes us not want to give it up?
Yeah, well, you are not alone. And let me say it's a good thing to get away from it because it's very high in fat. It's very high in saturated fat. It's surprisingly high in sodium. A lot of salt is used in the cheese making process. So there's ounce per ounce, there's more, or gram per gram, there's more sodium in cheese than there is in potato chips. It's very high in cholesterol. If it were any worse, it would be Vaseline. I have to tell you, it's like is the most unhealthy food. But the point that you're raising is actually the whole reason why I wrote the cheese trap is because we would do research studies and we use totally vegan diets, no animal products at all. And people's diabetes gets better. Sometimes it goes away. They lose weight dramatically. Um, their blood pressure comes down. Their cholesterol comes down. However, a fair number of these people will say, gee, the one thing I miss is cheese. Not milk, not ice cream, not meat. They miss cheese so much. And they describe it the way a person fondly remembers the last drink before they went into alcohol rehab. And you think, what is this about? It smells like old socks. Why do people get addicted to cheese? Why is this happening? So in the cheese trap, I lay out the reason why. And it has three parts. The first part is that it's fatty, and the second part is that it's salty. And fatty, salty things get us hooked, like French fries or
Hmm.
onion rings or potato chips.
Ice
People love
cream.
that.
Oh,
Uh,
I guess there's not salt. Well, there's some salt in
no,
ice cream. Sorry.
no. Well, and this is not. You can also get hooked on sugary things. That's where the ice cream comes in. But people like fat. They like salt. But the third thing in cheese, beyond the fat and beyond the salt, is what are called casomorphins. The dairy protein. It's in milk. It's in any kind of dairy products. The dairy protein is called casein, casein. And when it breaks apart in digestion, it releases opiates. And what I mean is narcotic chemicals that were in the milk are released. They go to the brain. They attach to the very same brain receptors that heroin would attach to, and they're not as strong.
Mm.
They're not as strong. The strongest of these is called morphoceptin, and by strong I mean it has about 1/10 the brain receptor binding power compared to pure pharmacy grade morphine. So it's not strong enough to get you arrested, but it is strong enough for you to say, I just love this cheese, and let's get a bigger brick next time, and I could be vegan except for the cheese. And it's this is it really is very much like a drug.
Is it that it's cheeses has a concentrated amount because of how they make cheese? It just concentrates the casein. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And what you said is exactly right. You can take milk. Milk has casein in it too. But when you turn the milk into cheese, you get rid of the whey, whey, whey. That's the liquid that has the excess sugar, the lactose sugar, and that kind of stuff. And what you're doing by turning milk into cheese is you're concentrating the protein and concentrating the fat. And so as the protein concentrates, the casomorphin content goes up. So there's some of it in milk, some of it in ice cream, some of it in yogurt, but there's a lot of it in cheese. So cheese is dairy crack, and it's not surprising we get hooked on this stuff. And that would be okay if it wasn't harmful, but it's loaded with cholesterol and fat, and it's got hormones in it too. And I have become quite convinced that this is a problem.
Are when you look at cultures that eat excessive amounts of cheese versus cultures that don't have any cheese, like for example, I really don't know any cheese that is in Asian cooking. Um, is there a big, can you see a big difference across the board in terms of diseases that occur in cultures that will eat a lot of cheese?
Yes. Yes, you're right. If you look at Japan or China, dairy products that was not part of the culture at all. Now, over the past 50 years or so, maybe a little bit less, 30, 40 years, dairy products have been heavily promoted. They've come in, and the diets have westernized. And it's not a pure cheese experiment, though, because meat is coming in too. McDonald's is there, and chicken.
Mm-hmm.
And it used to be a rice-based diet with rice and with noodles. And there might have been bits of meat, but they were used as flavorings in the way that you might use pickle or something like that. It was not a food group in and of itself. So meat is big now, and cheese is big, and the life expectancy in Japan is falling. Obesity is increasing. Diabetes has increased dramatically as Westernization has occurred. So it's not all cheese. That's the whole problem, but that's a big part of it. And in our country, and here in the United States, um, meat has fallen. Meat consumption has dropped about 10% over the last decade, or maybe 14, 15 years. Cheese is going up.
Oh,
And I have to say, we are not getting skinnier, and we're not getting healthier as a population. And I think a big part of it is that there's just cheese now on everything.
in Cowspiracy, which is on Netflix, really, really good documentary. They talk about how it takes about 1,000 gallons of water to make 1 gallon of dairy. And it's just, I mean, you look at California, for example, they have a huge water crisis, and that's not sustainable. I mean, to continue to consume, and then cheese is even more concentrated. So to continue to consume a product that is harming the planet, it doesn't make any sense, and harming our bodies. But yet we have this really difficult time to convince the population to stop consuming dairy because of the lobbying efforts of that industry. Now we have, the government telling us it's a food group and that it's healthy and we should eat it every day. Well, what do we do?
Um, Luckily, we make our diet choices as individuals. And at some point, people who do care about the environment and they do care about the world that we're leaving to our children, at some point you start to think to yourself, it's up to me to make the changes that I need to make in my own life. And getting away from animal products is number one. If you could wave a magic wand and have everybody in North America get away from animal products, it would have more effect than them retiring all of their automobiles. The environmental effect is enormous because just to get milk out of a cow. In North America, we have some 100 million cows. Each one is as big as a sofa. You could put all of them on one side of a balance, and they outweigh the entire human population. To feed them, you raise feed grain. They're not ordering room service. You got to raise feed grain. So that's corn or it's soybeans or whatever it is, alfalfa. To raise the feed grain, you need fertilizer. You need, in some cases, pesticides, and you need a lot of water, and that's what you're describing. So the fertilizer goes on, the water goes on to the feed for the feed grains, and then some of the fertilizer then trickles into the rivers and the streams, and it causes the overgrowth of algae. And that then, as the algae then die later, it ends up causing all kinds of ecological changes, so that there is in the Gulf of Mexico, right below where the Mississippi River drains out about 30 or 40% of North America. It drains right below Texas and Louisiana into the Gulf of Mexico. There's a dead zone of about 8,000 square miles. That's because of the overuse of fertilizer and so forth. So that's the first thing. The second thing is each cow is a belching machine. They are belching out methane. They're ruminant animals. They're chewing their cud. They're barfing it up and they're swallowing it back down. And as they do this, they belch methane. Methane is a very potent greenhouse chemical, much more so than CO2. And if we do nothing else for the environment, getting away from animal products is such a great step. And not to mention the animals themselves, because they are not volunteers. Now, I'm a doctor, and I've written about 20 books. And when I wrote The Cheese Trap, this is the first one where I ever felt compelled to describe what the animals go through, because that's a surprise for a lot of people, too.
Yeah, absolutely. They have to. I don't even want to get into it. But I've seen it, and it's really, when you really understand where food comes from, you want to make a change. Now, some people though are sitting here going, but wait a second, the paleo or the ketogenic diet, which is pretty much you could just eat cheese and be good on the ketogenic diet, is supposed to cure diabetes, and everyone has been told low carb, high fat. So, like, but you, with all your research, have discovered it's the opposite. It's eating a whole foods plant based diet that is going to actually reverse diabetes, increase insulin sensitivity, and you have research around how we can prevent Alzheimer's. So, what can you say to those people who have been told to eat low carb and that eat as much cheese as they want?
Yeah. Every few years, a new low carb book comes out, and they're very popular. And because people will lose weight on these, now it's not a healthy way to do it, and it's not a permanent way. It's a short-term fad, and then people get disgusted because it doesn't really work long-term, and they throw them away. And then somebody else writes another book. The reason that people lose weight on a low carb diet is because carbohydrates, in other words, starch. Carbohydrates are starch and sugars. It's in potatoes, and it's in bread, and carbohydrate is in beans and noodles and all kinds of foods. And it's healthy for you to eat starch because it breaks down to produce the glucose that your cells run on. Your brain runs on glucose. Your muscles run on glucose. Your body uses glucose the way your car uses gasoline. So it's a good thing to have starch because that gives you the glucose you need. But about maybe 50 or 60% of what people eat happens to be carbohydrate. And if you stop eating all the carbohydrate, you're going to lose weight because that's half of what you eat. If you take off any half of what you eat, you're going to lose weight. Um, the, but this was never the issue with diabetes. If you looked at Japan before westernization of the diet, they were eating a rice-based diet, and they had very little diabetes. It was between 1% and 5% of the population.
Wow.
And then as that was in 1980, by 1990, as westernization began, it wasn't 1% to 5% anymore. It was 11% to 12% of the population. And that was as the fat was coming in and the rice was going out, diabetes increased. Our research team has put this to a test using low-fat vegan diets, no animal products at all, and diabetes improves dramatically, and in some cases it just goes away. A low-carb diet can temporarily appear to help diabetes because diabetes means you don't have sugar. Diabetes means that you have too much sugar in your blood, and so if you stop eating sugar and you stop eating carbohydrate, your blood sugar will fall. But the real issue was, if you had too much sugar in your blood, why was that sugar not going into your muscle cells or into your brain to power that? That's what it's supposed to be doing. And the reason is that there's too much fat inside the muscle cells or the liver cells. And you get the fat out of them, then the sugar goes out of your blood into the cells where it belongs, and you do fine. And you don't have to do a low carb diet at all, and you're better off without it.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. I did ketogenic diet for about 2 years, and I using a low carb diet reversed my type 2 diabetes, but I never got my insulin sensitivity under control. And then I started hearing what you've just said, that it's the fat in the cells that's causing the insulin resistance. And it sounded like crazy to me, but I tried it. My husband and I went plant based and ate as much plant based as possible. And sure enough, my insulin sensitivity went up. I could not believe. I actually started weeping. I started crying. I was so excited when I took my blood sugar levels fasting in the morning, and they were the lowest I've ever seen. And I'm eating lots of carbs. It just happens to not be processed crap. It's brown rice and legumes and vegetables and stuff that I was really told that I could never eat. Back when I was buying into the ketogenic diet. Um, I feel like a totally different person. And I'm not here to tell everyone I'm not here to be that annoying vegan, right? That tells everyone they can't eat their eggs or whatever, but I want to give them the information and have them come to their own choices. When I heard that 1 cup of legumes was 18 grams of protein, I said, okay, this is easy. We can do this. In your book, The Cheese Trap, do you have guidance for how we can eat a different way? I think a lot of people go, okay, I'm going to give up cheese, but now what? Or, okay, I'm going to give up meat or I'm going to give up dairy, but now what? What do I do now? And they're sort of left with a gap in their diet, not really figuring out or knowing what they should do instead.
Sure. Yes. And before I go there, let me come back to the annoying vegan point that you raised earlier. Um, and I want to stick up for all those annoying vegans. And the reason is somebody in the family a generation ago said, Dad, you're smoking cigarettes.
Mm.
And I'd love for you to stop because, Dad, I love you too much. And that was the annoying little nudgy nanny kid who didn't want Dad to be able to enjoy his cigarettes, which he'd always liked. And they pestered him and pestered him and pestered him. And finally, he stopped smoking. And then after he did, he realized he was right. And to make that change, and that they had been right all along, and that the beneficiaries were not just him, it was them too. And people like me, I grew up in North Dakota. I hunted, my extended family raised cattle. And at some point you realize, wait a minute, this is where we were with tobacco a generation ago. Now we realize that food contributes to colorectal cancer, it contributes to heart disease, it contributes to diabetes, it's damaging the environment, and the animals aren't having such a nice time. And people, understandably, when they discover this, they want to share information with other people, and they don't do it rudely or any other way. But because when people point this out, it's a prick of conscience to people who want to be able to blindly do things that are harmful. They start calling non-smokers or people who don't eat meat, they call them names. But that 6-year-old kid who says, Daddy, don't smoke. Today could be a 6-year-old daughter who says, Daddy, I love you too much. I don't want you to have a heart attack. Let's you and me eat healthy together. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's a really good thing to be able to advocate. And of course, for me as a doctor, that's what people want, is that they need me to guide them to a healthier point. So with that preamble, let me tell you how we do it. Um, People come in here to the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, um, either to our classes here or they come into our medical center. We have a medical center called Barnard Medical Center. And they might have diabetes or they have some other health issue where a big diet change is going to help them. And so, well, I would suggest that a person who's listening to this program, you could do what our patients do. Take a week, 7 days. During this period of time, don't take anything out of your diet. For 7 days, explore plant-based foods and just try to figure out which ones you like. And take a piece of paper and write down breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack. Make 4 categories. And in each category, figure out foods that you like. So breakfast, I have milk on my cereal every morning. What would it be like with almond milk? Is that any good? I don't know. So for 7 days, we're going to just test out new food. So go to the store, buy almond milk, and if you like it, or try soy milk or oat milk or hemp milk. There's a million kinds. Or for lunch, I eat at a taco restaurant every day at lunch. I'm going to try the bean burrito. Or at dinner, I have spaghetti with meat sauce. I'm going to try the arrabbiata sauce or marinara or whatever it is. So we're trying out healthy plant-based foods. After a week, you'll have that list so full of foods that you like, that you've discovered that really work for you. So then now, step 2, take 3 weeks. Do it all vegan all the time. And when I say vegan, I mean no animal products. And keep oils low too. Don't go slathering oil all over your foods. And at the end of that 3 weeks, 2 things will happen. Even though you had only agreed to do it for 3 weeks, in that short period of time, you're losing weight and your cholesterol is improving. And if you have diabetes, your blood sugar is getting better, like what you described. And it gets better fast. And your energy is better and your digestion is better. And then the second thing that happens is your tastes are starting to change, where you thought you loved meat, but you haven't had it for 3 weeks, and you just find you don't really care that much about it, and you're discovering all kinds of other cool things. And so you say, well, I like what's happened. Over this 3-week period, I lost a couple pounds. I think I want to stick with this and see what happens. And it just becomes very easy, and people then stick with it. And as the weeks go by, you're losing more and more and more and more weight, and your energy is up, and people start commenting on how you look. And you think, all right, let's just keep this going. So you start with 7 days, just test out new foods, then take 3 weeks, throw out the animal products, see how you do. If you like how you feel, stick with it.
I love it. I love That's such great advice. It's really non-invasive and it builds them up instead of taking a bunch of stuff away and like freaking them out. That and you know what? It's so easy to eat out. I've really seen that on every restaurant. Not that I eat it all the time, but every restaurant we've been to since we've gone as plant-based as possible has been really easy. Just and you can even just say, "Hey, can you just make this without meat?" And I've even had we went to Red Robin, and I really just had a craving for nachos. I know nachos aren't exactly the healthiest food, but I looked at them. I said, "Okay, can you make this vegan, like no cheese, no meat? Can you just put in like give me extra guacamole, and can you get like lots of black beans and throw it on there, and lots of pico de gallo?" And that was my like healthy version of junk food, but I felt really good about it. Like that you can substitute. You can ask the waiter, "Hey, can you do this instead of that?" And just say, "Listen, I can't eat any meat, and I really don't want any. Can you make as little oil or no oil as possible?" I've been to a Mexican restaurant recently, and I had it wasn't even on the menu. I said, "Listen, you guys make fajitas. Can you do vegan fajitas, like just no meat?" "Oh yeah, yeah, of course. We've got all these vegetables." And I said, "Great. Okay, I don't want any, no dairy." You have to be really, you have to tell them like 5 times though, because the beans will come out and there'll be like little shreds of cheese on it. So you just have to really be clear. No cheese, no sour cream, no meat crumbles in the anything. I want lots and lots of vegetables, kind of extra vegetables, and it comes out in a big sizzling platter, all these gorgeous vegetables, and get some, corn tortillas and you've got some rice and beans, and it's really delicious. And we were stuffed. We were so full, and we didn't feel like we were missing out. And the people we were eating dinner with ordered, giant slabs of decaying flesh. And I looked over at that and I thought, that doesn't even look good anymore. My food, all the vegetables, and it smelled so good and it tastes so good. I'm like, my mouth is watering just thinking about all the delicious grilled vegetables. And the dead decaying fat flesh, which I used to love, just I had no desire anymore. And I thought, I couldn't believe how much my palate has changed in the last few months. It's amazing once you just try, like you said, try doing it for a few weeks. Your palate really does change. I was so impressed.
Oh, absolutely. And don't be surprised that you can eat out. Every culture around the world has has ways of taking these jewels from the earth. I'm talking about vegetables and fruits and beans and whole grains, these simple foods, and they turn them into dietary staples. So, for example, if you're in the Mediterranean region where they've got noodles and they'll put wonderful sauces like tomato sauces and maybe they'll make it a little bit piquant sometimes. They have chickpeas and lentils. That's a Mediterranean cuisine. If it's Indian cuisine, they'll take lentils or spinach or other things. And they have ways of turning these humble foods into culinary delights. Now, of course, when cultures become more wealthy, they find ways to put animal products in them that they couldn't have afforded otherwise. And so the curries get cheesed up and milked up and so forth. And unfortunately, the Northern European tradition has been the more meaty culture over time. But Latin American cuisine, Mediterranean cuisine, Asian cuisine, it's really easy. So any Italian restaurant, any Chinese restaurant, any Mexican restaurant, you go to a sushi bar, say, don't give me the fish sushi. Can you give me the cucumber sushi, asparagus sushi, avocado sushi, whatever it is? They got all kinds of things, very delicate, very light. And what you said about not being attracted to meat, people listening to this think, you're making that up. It's exactly like when a person has quit smoking and they haven't smoked for 6 months. And then they're in a room with a bunch of smokers. They think, ugh, why did I ever do this? And then it's going to get on my clothes. You don't like it anymore. And so meat eaters, you might have liked meat at one point, but when you get away from it and you haven't had it for a while and your tastes adjust, you really do look at these things in a completely different way. But there's no need for people to give up their skepticism. Just try it. Do a week of testing out new foods. Do 3 weeks of all vegan all the time, and you'll discover the power that you have. And then it's up to you. You can do it as much or as little as you want. My suggestion, though, is that people stick with it 100%, because if you don't, it's like being a person who has a cigarette about once a month. It kind of works its way back into your routine, and you're better off kind of putting a fence between you and the things that cause problems.
I agree. That makes a lot of sense. I've had a hard time kicking eggs. That's the one thing. I go to them once in a while. It's just been the last straw, and I think you've convinced me to just get them out of the house. My
Well,
house.
yeah, I would, for a couple of reasons. There's two problems with the egg. That is the yolk and the white.
Nothing
Yeah,
wrong with the shell.
the shell's okay. The yolk has as much cholesterol as an 8-ounce steak. And despite what the egg industry would like you to believe, dietary cholesterol does add to your cholesterol in your blood. And it also has some traces of bad fat in it. And the egg white is just animal protein. And you're getting plenty of protein from plant sources. And the chickens in most chicken operations are not having a very nice time. You've seen the documentaries, and now is the time to say, I don't want to have any part of that. And plus, chickens don't order room service. If you're going to feed grains for cows or pigs, it's the same thing for chickens. So environmentally, the way to be a friend to the earth and to be a friend to the animals and to be a friend to your coronary arteries is to get away from them. And pretty soon you'll discover that you don't need them anymore. Now, you probably know, and some people listening to this know, that when they made tofu for the first time, if you're not from an Asian tradition, it sounds weird, but it happens to be exactly egg white. It's just, tofu is just like egg white. So you can scramble it up and add some nutritional yeast and different flavorings, and pretty soon you find yourself preferring the scrambled tofu instead of the scrambled eggs. And people at first will say, "Oh, that sounds too weird," but they get into it and they really end up preferring it because there's no cholesterol, there's nothing to be ashamed of in it.
Actually, I love scrambled tofu. It's delicious. My body reacts to tofu. I'm a little like I have a food sensitivity towards it, which is kind of a bummer. Um,
You poor thing that
I,
can't. There are some people who are allergic to soy or strawberries or
right,
whatever.
right,
I'm sorry,
bananas, and it's just,
yeah,
it's
that can
par for the
happen.
course. Sometimes, although I've seen it happen where if someone get stops eating a food they're sensitive to, they can go back to it. Like for me, bananas, I had to cut out bananas for about a year because I was becoming allergic to them, and then I just had one the other day and I didn't have any allergies. But I'm not gonna test fate with the IgG response. But yeah, just playing around with feeling how our body is. Okay, I had this food, all these vegetables and legumes and grains and brown rice, and I feel amazing. Okay, I'm gonna keep doing that one. And then if you eat something and you don't feel good, don't do that. Do like listen to your body, because I feel like eating more plant based, you really get in tune with. Do you feel awesome after that meal? Great, keep doing that. Now, what about the meat substitutes? Like, I'm kind of grossed out by the Beyond Meat burger and these like fake chicken nuggets. And I'm in a bunch of vegetarian and vegan Facebook groups, and they love it. They're so excited about their fake meat substitutes. But when you look at the ingredients, they're all like highly processed and filled with oil. What are your thoughts on these?
Uh, Um, it's meat methadone. If for the meat addict, this is your pathway to health, but it's a stepping stone. So sooner or later you'll get to healthier choices, but they're good for that reason. And for anybody who thinks they're processed, let me tell you, it is a whole lot better than what it is replacing.
Mm,
Um, if you ever think what goes into an actual hamburger, um, it's not pleasant,
mm-hmm.
and it's not clean, and it's creepy. In fact, if you don't mind, let me just say a couple words about this, if you don't mind, because I think
Please.
your listeners do need to know about this. People imagine, oh, the milk comes to us in a nice carton, it's pristine, it's wonderful. Um, Cows do not give milk until a cow has been pregnant, and cows get pregnant. The farmers impregnate the cows every single year to keep, not personally, but the cows are impregnated every year because that keeps their milk production high. And a cow's pregnancy is about 9 months. So 9 months out of every 12 cows are pregnant. To get them pregnant, you don't do this by sending them out in the fields with roses and chocolate and hope they meet a nice bull. What you do is they're chained up. The farmer takes his left hand and puts it up the cow's rectum, all the way up to his elbow, and through the rectal wall you feel the uterus. With his right hand, he sticks through the cow's cervix what looks like a knitting needle loaded with sperm that's then injected, and the cow is now going to become pregnant, and she's not going to fight because she's chained. She can't fight. 9 months later, she gives birth, and even though she didn't ask to get pregnant, her baby calf is now on the ground in the hay in front of her. And she starts to bond to her baby, and the baby bonds to her, and the little awkward baby blinks his eyes and tries awkwardly to stand up, and the mother starts licking him, and the farmhands all think that's just so beautiful. It gets me every time to see this beautiful little baby. But then it hits them that if that baby stays with mom and drinks her milk, our dairy is going to go out of business because we're going to take that milk. And they have a solution to that, and the solution is a wheelbarrow. They bring the wheelbarrow up, and they pick up the baby by his or her chest, stick the baby in the wheelbarrow, and they walk away. And there is no bond stronger in nature than the bond between a mother and her baby. And it can be a human or a cow or any kind of animal. That mother is going to fight for her baby, and she does. And she pushes the farmer and says, "Wait, give me back my baby," basically. And then pretty soon a gate will be slammed in her face, and the baby goes off in the distance. She'll never see her baby again. And she will stand there and cry out all night long, and the baby will cry out for her. But we're going to do this dairy, and then 3 months later they impregnate her again, and she goes through this again. And by the time she's about 4, a cow normally lives to be about 20 years. That's their life expectancy. But by the time she's about 4 years of age on a modern dairy, they do the math, and they realize that she's not giving them as much milk as she did when she was 2 or 3. And so they kill her. She becomes hamburger. And her daughter is then impregnated by a farmhand who rams his left hand up her rectum, and the right hand puts the sperm into her cervix and takes her baby away. and then she'll be killed when she's about 4, and her daughters will take her place. And if it sounds creepy, it is creepy. And we're doing this so that we can have ice cream. And the dairy industry is a meat industry. It's just we artificially inseminate these animals and take away their progeny over and over again until we kill them for meat. And if people have a heart for animals, they start to realize this is not really civilized behavior. And I'm a doctor and I share these facts because for people who are worried about their coronary arteries, if concern for animals motivates you toward healthier foods, then that's a good thing.
It is such a weird and twisted. How did we even get here? It's like a bad sci-fi movie. You know, how did we even get here that we want to consume the milk of another species beyond infancy? I mean, you know, as a woman who's had a child who breastfed, you know, and I saw the importance of breastfeeding. That is for the first 6 months of that baby's life, that is their immune, the mother's breast milk is the child's immune system. So there's an entire immune system in dairy, but it's of a cow. We're drinking a cow's immune system. There's lots of hormones, so we get a little tiny, maybe 6 or 8 pound baby to turn into, you know, a 12 pound baby the year later, or a 24 to 30 pound baby a year and a half later. And um, and so with a cow, right, though it's turning, what is it, like a 60 pound calf into a 400 pound cow within a year if they drink that milk. And so it's just like it's growth hormone juice, and we're drinking something that is someone, you know, a different species immune system, a different species growth hormone juice. It's And we haven't even touched on the fact that it's filled with pus and often infections and blood.
Well, well, the fact that the cows are pregnant does introduce an important part here because they make a pregnant animal makes estrogen, and the estrogen gets into the milk. And it's interesting. You can take a bucket of milk and send it to a laboratory, and they'll tell you how far along in pregnancy that animal is.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
and so you think, well, yeah, but I mean, how much is it? Um, there was interesting research done in Rochester, New York, where it turned out they went into a fertility clinic, and the more cheese men ate, the lower their sperm counts were. And so the theory was starting to be formulated that maybe if Hank is eating a lot of cheese, he's getting a lot of estrogen, which is the female sex hormone, and maybe that's affecting his fertility. Well, could that be true? And the answer is we don't know. But what's got us really worried is not men's fertility. What's got us worried is women with breast cancer. There was a big study in California, and women who already had had breast cancer and had been treated for it successfully, they were followed over a number of years. And if you have had breast cancer, you got one thing on your mind, which is I do not want that disease to come back. And it turned out that the women who consumed the most cheese and other high-fat dairy products had a 49% higher risk of dying of their cancer compared to the women who tended to avoid high-fat dairy products.
Mm.
So again, it raises the same question. Cheese has hormones in it. Could those traces of estrogens be enough to cause my cancer to progress? And the answer is we don't know, but we do know that there's hormones in milk. They're concentrated as milk goes to cheese. And the average American eats about 35 pounds of it every single year. That's 65,000 calories worth of cheese. And those traces of hormones are added to the hormones already in your body. And it could well be that it is part of the problem. So while the science is getting worked out, my suggestion is you look at your 8-year-old daughter or your 7-year-old son or whoever and try to decide if you want to feed them a food that's got female hormones in it. And I think for most parents, the answer is going to be, I don't want to do that. Let me give them healthier foods.
Now there's a cheese alternative at Trader Joe's. I mean, you know, you think of Whole Foods has a bunch of them, right? But just the other day we decided we were going to make a vegan pizza. I think it was last night actually. We had vegan pizzas, and at Trader Joe's they have a cauliflower crust. It's just cauliflower and corn, and then we got a bunch of vegetables, And then we got the Trader Joe's cheese, which has like almond in it and something else. They now they've got two of them, and one of them is not 100% dairy free, so you got to be careful. One of them, I think, has casein in it, but there's one that's completely, dairy free cheese, basically, that melts just like regular cheese. And we felt like we were actually having pizzas with real cheese. It was really cool. So there are ways that people can fill, if there's a giant gap in their life once they remove cheese, they can go out and try nut cheeses. Cashew cheese is one of my favorites. What's your favorite brand? Do you ever partake in the non-dairy cheese?
Oh, there's all kinds of them, and I have to say, I think it's delightful that they're there. There's one called tree line cheese, which is made from cashews, absolutely delicious. There's one called Miyoko's, and Miyoko's kitchen. She makes these really works of art, I have to say. There's one called Kite Hill,
Mm-hmm.
and Kite Hill it's an absolute cheese making process, but they start with almond milk instead of cow's milk. However, Miyoko, who is a wonderful chef, she said you should see her cheeses. She wraps them up in a fig leaf, or she has one that's it's covered in the ash of a Mediterranean pine. And these you serve these at a party, and your guests just they marvel at how they look and how they taste it. But Miyoko said to me, she said, Neal, this is not a food group. Don't take one of my cheeses and just, stuff it down your esophagus. This is a nibble food for special occasions. And the reason I mention that is that people who have been eating cheese and they might have health problems they might have been gaining weight and so forth. And when they go to a vegan cheese, they think, wow, I should eat the same amount. But I really think of these as your break away from animal-based cheeses and as kind of a bridge to simpler foods rather than eating huge amounts of even plant-based. I mean, don't get me wrong, the plant-based cheeses are dramatically better. They don't have any cholesterol, they don't have any hormones in them. They're healthier in every possible way. But even so, I would go easy on them.
Right. I mean, because they're very high in calories. It's not like, so you want, like you said, you're not going to eat it every day. It's a real special treat. We just, decided it would be some kind of special treat last night,
Yep,
and it's like that.
yep.
Maybe once a month we're gonna have a vegan pizza night, that kind of thing. But for the most part, it's left to that special occasions. I love nut. I actually grew up dairy free. When I was 6 years old, I was really sick, and my mom took us to a naturopath, and he said, "You got it. No more dairy ever." And we switched to soy milk at that time. It wasn't GMO. But I grew up eating Rice Dream instead of ice cream, right? And there's now, we're so blessed in that I believe that the latest statistic is that 51% of all dairy sales are actually non-dairy. That they're all the alternatives, the nut dairies, and it's just so cool that we have access to this now.
Oh yeah, you go
So
into the store. The dairy case used to be dairy.
right,
Now you look at the dairy case and it's almond milk, soy milk, rice milk.
right.
It's there's still cow's milk there, but it's giving away more space all the time. So that's a good trend to see.
Right, and we can also, you don't have to, be upset about giving up dairy if you have cream in your coffee every morning. There's nut pods, which are my favorite, and it's just almond milk and coconut milk, and it's the most accurate representation of half and half. There's no sugar added, and that's my favorite in terms of a non-dairy creamer. There's tons of them out there, so we can really like get rid of dairy 100% and be really happy about it. Now, I know you have got to go, and I just have a really quick question. I want to dive in just a little bit into this topic. You have so much research around type 2 diabetes and Alzheimer's. If someone right now is beginning to have dementia, I have a friend he just started having dementia, and I said, your diet can make a big difference. You don't have to, buy into what the doctor's saying. Oh, this is just, you have Alzheimer's, it's just the way it is, and there's nothing you can do about it. There's a lot you can do about it, because every time you open your mouth and you put something in it, you're either harming your body or healing your body. So, in terms of Alzheimer's, what can we do to prevent, or if someone is beginning dementia, what kind of diet would best support them in healing their body as much as possible?
Yeah. Back in 1993 in Chicago, a study got started called the Chicago Health and Aging Project. And what they did is they analyzed the diets of thousands of people in Chicago. And then they just waited. and they looked to see who would get Alzheimer's and who did not. And it became a gold mine because they started to discover these dramatic differences. And the first thing was, we've been talking about bad fat, saturated fat. The people who ate the most saturated fat had 3 times the Alzheimer's risk compared to the people who tended to avoid bad fat. Then they looked at trans fats, which are in a lot of snack foods. Luckily, they're phasing out quickly. But so step one, you get away from the bad fats, and your risk of Alzheimer's diminishes. Well, where are bad fats in your diet? Dairy's number one, meat's number two. And of course, there are many other things too. If you lace up your sneakers and you exercise, that helps. Foods that are rich in vitamin E, that's nuts, seeds, certain other foods like mangoes and spinach. Vitamin E is protective. It cuts Alzheimer's risk by about half. So I wrote a whole book called Power Foods for the Brain that goes into these details that what people can do to protect themselves from Alzheimer's. Now, I have to say that prevention is the best thing. There has been some research showing that if a person's memory is starting to sputter, that making a diet change and exercising will help them, which is great. But I have to say that if Alzheimer's has really proceeded and the brain is being destroyed, I don't think you're going to turn it around. So you want to change your diet now and prevent this to the extent you can.
Absolutely. Well, we'll definitely have a link to to those books as well, to all your books in the show notes of the podcast. It has been such a pleasure having you here today. So just to recap, let's get rid of the cheese. Let's get rid of all dairy. What about butter and yogurt? And some people think that because yogurt's been cultured, that somehow still it's good for us. Are we getting rid of absolutely everything that basically comes out of a cow, or is there anything that comes out of a cow that we can keep in our diet?
I think that we need to leave the cows in peace. Leave them alone. And the healthy food groups are whole grains and vegetables and fruits, legumes, the bean group. And a plant-based diet gives you the nutrition you need. Keep the oils low. Do take a vitamin B12 supplement. Everybody needs it for healthy nerves, healthy blood. And if you don't get sunlight normally on your skin gives you vitamin D. And no matter what you're eating, if you're not getting sunlight, you ought to take a vitamin D supplement. That's a prescription for a healthy diet. And if people follow that, they're going to do a whole lot better.
Now, and the nutritional yeast, is that enough if we eat it every day? I take nutritional yeast and I put it in brown rice and making like cheesy rice. It tastes delicious. If you eat nutritional yeast, is that enough B12 or should we take an additional B12 supplement?
It may well be. There's a lot of brands that do have added B12, but I encourage people to not fool around with B12 deficiency and to go ahead and take a supplement because you need it for healthy nerves, healthy blood, and who knows if you're eating. There are many fortified foods fortified with B12, but you might be missing them some. So I encourage people to take a supplement, even if they are having things like nutritional yeast that have B12 supplementation.
It has been such a pleasure having you on the show today. Please, you are welcome back anytime. I'd love to have you back to dive into so many of these wonderful topics, especially your research. I think it's really important for people to learn your research so that we can make these educated choices around our diet instead of just eat the way we've always ate or eat because this is how everyone else eats or eat because this is how our parents and grandparents ate. We need to eat because the science backs up the way to eat for best health. Is there anything you'd like to say to wrap up today's interview? Anything you'd like to say to the listeners?
Maybe just one last thing. If somebody's intrigued and you might be a little skeptical, but you think, I'd like to at least try it. We do have at our website, which is PCRM.org, it's Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. At PCRM.org, we have a Kickstart program where for 3 weeks, we'll give you menus and recipes and cooking videos, and it's all free. And just try going all vegan all the time. 3 weeks, it'll change your life. The Kickstart program is in English, Spanish, Mandarin. We have one for people from the Indian subcontinent. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. I'm looking at it right now. I'm going to make sure that link is in the show notes of today's podcast. It looks great. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been wonderful.
Thank you. Thanks for including me.
Hello, true health seeker. Have you ever thought about becoming a health coach? Do you love learning about nutrition and how we can shift our lifestyle and our diet so that we can gain optimal health and happiness and longevity? Do you love helping your friends and family to solve their health problems and to figure out what they can do to eat healthier? Are you interested in becoming someone who can grow their own business, support people in their success? Do you love helping people? You might be the perfect candidate to become a health coach. I highly recommend checking out the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. I just spent the last year in their health coaching certification program, and it really blew me away. It was so amazing. I learned over 100 dietary theories. I learned all about nutrition, but from a standpoint of how we can help people to shift their life and shift their lifestyle to gain true holistic health. I definitely recommend you check them out. You can Google Institute for Integrative Nutrition or IIN and give them a call, or you can go to learntruehealth.com/coach and you can receive a free module of their training to check it out and see if it's something that you'd be interested in. Be sure to mention my name, Ashley James, in the Learn True Health podcast, because I made a deal with them that they will give you the best price possible. I highly recommend checking it out. It really changed my life to be in their program, and I'm such a big advocate that I wanted to spread this information. We need more health coaches. In fact, health coaching is the largest growing career right now in the health field. So many health coaches are getting in and helping people because you can work in chiropractic offices, doctors' offices, you can work in hospitals, you can work online through Skype and help people around the world. You can become an author, you can go into the school system and help your local schools shift their programs to help children be healthier. You can go into senior centers and help them to shift their diet and lifestyle to best support them in their success and their health goals. There's so many different available options for you when you become a certified health coach. So check out IIN, check out the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, mention my name, get the best deal. Give them a call and they'll give you lots of free information and help you to see if this is the right move for you. Classes are starting soon. The next round of classes are starting at the end of the month. So you're going to want to call them now and check it out. And if you know anyone in your life who would be an amazing coach, please tell them about it. Being a health coach is so rewarding and you get to help so many people.